Hey David, I'm having a rough time writing this latest story of mine. I'm really feeling uninspired in my expositional skills.
Expositional, you say, Donald?
Yeah, I just can't do it. Ever since my wife left me, my job let me go, and I've been forced to live in my mom's basement, I can't seem to write exposition any longer. You know that's how I always am, David, in our 17-year-long friendship.
Yes, I know, Donald. Only too well. Once you could write beautiful exposition and we'd all be engaged as we listened to the poetry from your penmanship. But alas, as we both know, those days are no more. Until now!
Whoa, what are you talking about?
We at the Writ this week are sponsored by the latest gizmo birthed from the Writ factories, the exposition generator. No longer will your stories leave out crucial details for the audience. Now everyone will always know the context of every character, plot, and setting they come across. Nothing will be left to the imagination after one quick use of the exposition generator.
That sounds wonderful, David. Show me how it works, as we always do in these advertisements.
Absolutely, Donald. Take this excerpt from the latest fantasy novel from legendary author Mohammed Smith, The Calamity of Blah. Here's how this story was written before using the exposition generator.
Greetings, King Blossus.
Greetings, King Bliam. Here is your gold.
And here are your horses. May your kingdom reign supreme.
As may yours. Quick, trim, and to the point. But that's not good enough for fantasy novels these days. They must be at least 150,000 words to be taken seriously, after all. Here's the final version of the scene after Mohammed Smith used the exposition generator.
Greetings, King Blossus, son of Blotchard, ruler of the 5th kingdom of Blah.
And my greetings to you as well, King Blahium, son of Blawfred, ruler of the 7th kingdom of Blah. My kingdom is at war with the savage Hullabalooians. My soldiers are without steeds, and the Hullabalooians have always been weak to cavalry. I request aid, O great King Blahium.
Fear not, King Blossus. As a kingdom lower in the hierarchy of the 12 kingdoms of Blah than you, it is my duty to offer you aid in your times of need. I must request a payment of gold, though, as is our sacred tradition.
Of course. Here is your gold, collected from all my peasants and feudal lords.
Thank you. And here are your horses, from the finest Blothian stock. They can run for 100 miles without rest. With these fine war horses, may your kingdom reign supreme against the tyrannical Hullabalooians.
As may yours, King Blahium. May the Blah gods watch over us for all time.
Wow, David, that's so much better! And it's totally not clunky or filled with unnecessary details.
Of course not, Donald. And this device can be yours, listeners. Call our toll-free number and purchase the exposition generator. Guaranteed to add meat to even the most bone-thin of stories. The two twits of the Writ are not responsible for any overly bloated descriptions, worn out plot threads, long-winded conversations, collapsed story structure, or strained pacing from extended use of the exposition generator. The generator is only intended for limited use and should not be repeatedly applied to the same draft of the story, or else the narrative risks complete dismemberment from an overabundance of exposition. Please use the generator responsibly and do not exceed the recommended application usage. To avoid long-term injury, seek immediate medical help for an exposition lasting more than 4 hours. Side effects may include paper shortage, pacing ache, swelling of backstories, vomiting of plot threads, dizziness of readers' brains, and overindulgence of the author's ego. Use the exposition generator at your own risk.
Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of the Writ, the show where the pen is mightier than the sword. I mean, literally, have you seen that giant pen in our cover image? It's enormous! It could skewer the both of us like a kebab, David!
I really don't feel like being made into a shish kebab, Donald, but anyway.
I don't think anyone feels like that. But...
oh, well.
That's the beauty of it. You can't choose. It just happens. I say it like it's a common occurrence.
Yeah, very, very strange. Alright, fair enough.
All right.
Anyhow, in our usual segments, we have split them up because we're doing a weekly format now. So we finally get to talk about what we at the Writ have writ.
Yes, and you, like last time, get to. I mean, not like the time where we did the what we rip off from this month. You get to go first, David.
Oh, how nice of you, Donald. Thank you. So yes, I mentioned I had a hodgepodge of progress last time, but this time I finished my episode of Starburst. Sent it to my co-author.
Good job.
And literally, but above that, my co-author managed an entire 4-parter in like a week. Turned it around, gave it back to me, and I've been working on edits for that as well.
Nice.
Normally it takes him well more than a single week to do a particular single episode.
You felt particularly inspired.
He was particularly inspired. There's also... actually, I do want to, while I'm thinking about it, I do want to shout out this buddy. This is actually going up quite a bit later than the fact, but there have been some major winter storms in his area.
Yes,
so,
there have been here too. So in Colorado.
Yeah, hope you're safe. Hope you're safe when you listen to this. Everything's blown over. But thanks for churning those episodes out, buddy. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
We are silly excited, of course, because not only did he have like several snow days in a row thanks to the blizzard stuffs, but we're getting really close to the finale of season 1 of Starburst. So maybe by next time we do what we have writ, I'll be talking about finishing that. Fingers crossed. Oh, yeah. And your support really helps. So please email us and bug me about it, listeners. Thanks.
Yes.
I took a bunch of time to handwrite personal thank you letters to the teachers that I cooperated with this school year that just finished. All of those were very well received. I actually did a kind of neat thing. I did 2 letters to each person. So, of course, it takes a lot of time, right? But I did one of them in English and then one of them in Japanese.
Right.
They did not say exactly the same thing, but the sentiment was very similar. So they all were all very happy to receive that, and so I'm happy that those efforts were appreciated since it took quite a bit of time.
Well, yes.
Handwriting. Let's see, how many did I do? I did 24 for the homeroom teachers, and I did another 5 on top of that to various other people as well. So it was a very time-consuming project.
Right.
But it was fun. Additionally, there's something that I was really excited to have some involvement with. There's a newer podcast about tokusatsu out there now.
Yeah.
So I'll call it Writting enough to mention them. My friends started the Henshin Heroes podcast. It is available, a bunch of social media stuffs. I will not mention those all right now, but I do want to say that I was a guest host for the first couple of episodes, and it was a really fun time. Just chatting about that stuff that I love so much with people who are similarly passionate about it. If you're into all those shows that I talk about incessantly, go take a listen to them.
I might listen to the first few episodes with you in them just to see how it looks with other people. I think it'd be cool to hear you in another podcast.
Yeah, so they are available. You can do that on iTunes. The main place that they are hosted is a site called Anchor FM.
Right.
And Anchor site actually does a lot of distribution of its own accord. So you can be matched up with ad partners to get some revenue out of it. They'll help put your name out there, your podcast out there to a bunch of other podcast hosting sources. And so they have done a lot of stuff in a very short span of time. I literally met the hosts a couple of weeks before we embarked on this podcast adventure, and they are still continuing this. They are forging ahead without any extra help from me. And pretty soon they should pick up a decent following. If you're obviously into that kind of stuff, please take a listen. It's a lot of fun. They had the most recent episode that I have heard, which won't be true by the time this is published, I realize, but the most recent episode they recorded at the time of recording, they pitched their own original Kamen Rider show.
Nice.
Which was really fun. They even went out and did designs for them, which is really cool. So go take a listen to that.
Real fans.
Also available on YouTube, too. Yeah. I'll talk more about that in Contact because I'm shouting them out here. But yeah, so obviously been doing a lot of writing stuff of late in that regard.
That's cool. Sounds like you've done
Which is why I was excited to talk about it. So now I'm going to get out of my own way here and let's figure out what Donald has been writing.
Well, now I feel bad because I haven't written that much. I mean, other than a little bit more on Tesla Knots. But I have been sending out query letters and synopses to literary agents about Megazoic. I've sent out 5 so far. It'll take a couple months for them to respond if they do, but I've got about 50 different ones to send to, so hopefully one of them takes a chance on me.
So my question is, if somebody takes the chance on you, do you send them to the rest?
Yeah, I'd keep going. I don't know.
Well, I'm just thinking, do you have to... Because if they did something like that with a contract type situation, would they allow you to go to other publishers?
Well, the thing is, though, as long as these things take, I probably will have sent it to all of them before I get one response. So,
well, it depends on how quick you send them, but yeah. But yeah, that's absolutely exciting to hear, especially considering you've got all 3 of those published on Amazon.com for your approval, listeners. So go check them out.
And the 4th one will be out here soon, so... Yep, indeed. Yeah, the nice thing about literary agents is that they would go to publishers for me, with me as their client, and publishers would be more willing to listen to them than
to an agent
Yeah,
because they have the credibility.
And if this doesn't work out, which I'm really scared it won't, I'll try to go to publishers myself.
Come on. So. Where's your sense of adventure, Mr. Adventurous Fellow?
I'm not an adventurous fellow. You've just decided that's my catchphrase because I said it once at the beginning of the first episode of the Writ, in a very sarcastic tone, might I add.
No, actually, that was just callback for humor. I'm not.
Right.
I know you better than that.
That's good. I'm glad you do. I'm glad you understand me.
If I didn't understand you, would I have been your co-host for like 98% of these episodes?
Yep. You only missed 2 of them, but that's okay.
Exactly. Anyway.
So, so I'm hoping one of them takes a chance on me. I'm selling Megazoic in a lot of different places now, so surely they'll be impressed by that, right? I don't know, but we'll find out. In order to venture out into this world, you need to take those first steps, and that's what I'm doing. I can do this. I can do this. I can. I'm terrified, listeners. None of them might respond. And then what do I do? What do I do then, huh? Sorry, I've got a lot of feelings.
Well, I mean, you've already got it out there, so if worst comes to worst, you've already published.
Yes.
This is simply to get an official printing that should get more eyes, that should get some official backing, and that'll really help your career. That does not mean that you've accomplished nothing, so please don't view it like this is a failure, even if nobody responds to you.
I'll try not to. But yeah, you're right. I need to
Anyway, this set of episodes, we were talking about less mainstream styles of writing. Obviously, prose is the big one for creative writers, but we talked about a couple of other things as well. This week, we're talking about one that's near and dear to my heart, lyric writing, and a little bit more about poetry because they are kind of related.
Yes, we already did an episode on poetry, episode 22. Listen to that with my coworker, Sydney Chapin.
Well, and that's...
I always say Chapin, but it's Chapin.
Well, I mean, there are a bunch of ways to skin a cat, but there's only one way to correctly pronounce a name, right? Anyhow, so please listen to that for more on, because she is, compared to us, a poetry expert, so she put a lot of great advice for us there. Not to regurgitate the poetry stuff. I'm more looking at it from a perspective of how it relates to lyric writing.
And since I have zero experience on this, I'm just going to sit back and let you talk. I have one tip that I learned from just...
Well, and I seem to... I'm here. I seem to remember that you have done, like, musical writing before, so it's not like you haven't written lyrics, it's just that you don't do it nearly as much as I would, so...
Right.
So, for a quick lyric writing lesson, summary in form with all the other things we've done thus far.
Please enlighten us.
Lyrics are a sensitive subject. Obviously, you have to take quite a bit more care with the word choice than you might even in prose or lines of dialogue. This means that sometimes songs can take multiple forms, despite the melody or the harmonic structure of it not changing at all.
Right.
Lyrics go through a bunch of reversions, and that's entirely normal. You may run into trouble syllabifying everything. Syllabifying is a fancy word that's saying fitting every syllable to the melody.
I'll believe you, that's a real word.
But that's where your creativity comes in. Song structure in particular, even different from poetry, has the refrain or chorus lyric, which is very important to the message you send with the lyrics.
Right.
So make your hooks good. Something you'd like hearing a million times as it cycles through your head. Trust me, speaking from experience on this one. If you, like I sometimes do, have trouble coming back to the same chorus text, consider which version you have is more effective for the message you're trying to send.
Right.
You can obviously play around within verses, have a bridge section, refrains, choruses, and you choose where to put those lyrics.
Right.
Also not essential, but sometimes very helpful to the process, having your own melody figured out.
That's the part I struggle with. I've always been bad about notes. Like, I would love to compose music. Like, I listen to movie scores a lot, but it's not in me. Like, when I try to, I'm just, like, pushing random notes together. I'm like, I have no idea about how patterns work, or, like, melodic sort of traditions, or,
put it this way,
the terms.
If you look at hymns, obviously this is more of a churchgoer thing, but if you look at hymns, how many tunes have been repurposed to make different songs?
Right.
If you're having trouble with that, maybe try experimenting with those. Those hymn tunes are generally public domain because they were composed so long ago.
That's an interesting idea.
And you can use that melody and try and fit your words into it. And, if nothing else, it gives you a lesson of how the music interacts with the lyric.
Right.
But if you have your own melody figured out, it can help you set, like, if I want this part to have a bunch of emphasis, I can have the melody go up because naturally the voice gets a little bit louder, a little bit more color in it sometimes.
Right.
And so you can make those effects too if you put those together.
Okay.
In fact, I tend to compose the song with the lyrics on the fly. Like, I'll even, I'll hum the melody and, like, make up the words as I go along. This does take some time, and I end up changing lots of things in process. But, the reason I start lyricizing to begin with is because I had this melody and I wanted to sing it.
Right.
And so I just make the words as I go.
Okay.
Once I get the words, I sit down and I figure out the exact melody to take it from there. So, like, once I have the words set, I'll sit at the piano and figure out exactly what notes I'm looking for. And, if there's something that's really hard to sing, maybe you'll change it around at that time. But, theoretically, that's separate from lyric writing itself, so I'm not going to get too in-depth on music composition here.
Right.
Something else worth mentioning in this vein as well, and this is not lyric writing per se, but something very akin to it, and that is what to do about Songfics. I'm not sure that listeners have done them before, heard about them before.
I don't know what they are.
Them before, but something that Donald brought up a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about scripts and whatnot. So for more on that, listen to episode 34 of the Writ.
Okay, I don't remember this, and this was and recording wise, this was just an hour ago.
So he was saying that some scripts will ask you to listen to songs to get in the right mindset. So that's one form. A songfic in particular is something done by a writer as they're weaving the lyric into their story.
Right.
There was a website that I used to frequent. It had a very large archive of fan fiction, mostly related to Power Rangers because that was the theme of that particular site, and obviously one of my interests too. But there was an intriguing author who combined a lot of songs from a band that I regularly listen to in her stories.
Okay.
So she would use the lyrics and intersperse them with the actions of the story. Some writers will do this by having the music playing in the background and doing that. Right. In fact, I did one. I want to say I did this as part of a NaNoWriMo like last year or the year before.
Okay.
Where I had a piece that I was preparing for an orchestra concert and I just let it go. It's classical music, right?
Right.
So there are no words in that per se. It's just instrumental. But by letting the music flow through me as I was writing, it changed the story. And you know how sometimes you just think about certain things and you picture certain things in your brain when you're hearing classical music.
Right.
Not everybody, perhaps, but it's pretty common.
Yes.
And so I used that to my advantage to craft this fic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, if you're going like full-on song fic, then you might as well use the song somehow. So whether it's played on loop or whether you put the lyrics interspersed with your actions and stuff like this writer I was talking about did, that's really fun. It's a quite different way to write things, but you have to figure out how much you want to use the song. You have to figure out what your writing looks, so what your session resembles. Are you listening to this on ad nauseum as you're trying to write this story? Is it longer so you let the natural ebb and flow of the music affect your story or whatnot? It's really fun. So I recommend taking a trip down that road with one of your favorite songs, because obviously you're going to be listening to a lot of it.
Right.
To get the thing
I'll get right on that.
But yeah, it's a really fun kind of writing that is not very commonly done, and it definitely fits more here, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit.
Makes sense.
But yeah, Songfics, try them. They're fun. Whether it's instrumental music and you're just, playing along with whatever that conjures in your mind.
I often listen to
like
instrumental music and think about scenes from my books, so I never really write while listening to music, though. That's always been difficult for me, but...
Fair. And, because the pace is such that you can't expressly change it, sometimes your pacing in that story becomes a bit of an issue. But that's, again, something that you could put on repeat and say, hey, let me go back to this section, listen to it again with a little bit more, with less fractured thoughts. Because I have so many fractured thoughts. Anyways, that's my thing about Songfics. But back to lyric writing in particular, I've got a couple of tipperoonies.
Lyric-a-roonies?
If you don't mind.
Doesn't work.
That doesn't work. Tippa-lyrics?
That doesn't work either, but good effort.
Well, hey, I'll get a C on the paper for trying.
Sort of like I did with literary theory. Yeah.
For more on that reference, please listen to
what
last
have I
week's episode. Actually, that was entirely the reason I did it, but I'm not going to force a ding there.
Okay, that's fine.
Anyway, so my tip number 1. With a computer word processor, you have the backspace key and separate save files as need be for your writing.
Right.
With lyrics, you may not have that. Especially if you do them like I do, where I'm not sitting at a computer, I'm just walking down the street and doing something, thinking about it as I go. It may be helpful to record yourself singing them, or plain on singing them if you have a melody figured out, particularly for use of, making the chorus the same every time. I have this bad habit. By the time I finally work around to the chorus again, I can't make it exactly the same.
Okay.
So, the lyrics change, which defeats the purpose. It's not really a chorus at that point.
Right.
So, recording it and playing it back to yourself as you tweak. Oh, that really didn't work out. Oh, God, I was searching for that rhyme, and so the rhythm kind of went out of whack or whatever.
Right.
So use that instead. I mean, well, I'll talk more about this in the next tip or so, but, you shouldn't get rid of something completely unless you decide that you're just scrapping the whole thing.
Right. Makes sense.
But, playing it back to yourself as you tweak things around, letting yourself experiment with things, even if your melody is set but your words aren't, just hum the melody into your recording and see how the words fit or something. There are various ways to do this, but, you don't always use word processing software to do that, so keep those other devices close to hand if you're doing a lot of lyric writing, because I would hate, from a personal perspective, I would hate to lose those lyrics that I spent time on, even if they're not the final version.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I was kind of fading off. I was like, I'm really tired. But I'm sure you said some really good things.
Well, I'm sure you have a chance to add your own, so go ahead.
I have one tipperoonie here One. You ready for it?
1 is better than 0. Go ahead. What you got?
Rhymes
Hit
are
me
more
with your
than
best
just...
shot.
What?
I was referencing a song because the show.
I
anyway.
didn't hear it. Okay, fine.
Hit me with your best shot.
Oh, that song. I'm sorry, I
go.
didn't hear you with the Skype thing. Oh, yeah. I know that song. Of course
go
I know
ahead.
that song. Okay. All right. Rhymes are more than just finding words that literally sound like each other. They gotta have the same flow. It's like a quote from a movie I like, in case you're curious, it's music and lyrics. Mentions a guy who's not good with lyrics, said he once tried to rhyme you and me with autopsy. That doesn't work, the flow isn't there.
Well, I mean, it literally, the last syllable rhymes.
Yeah, it rhymes, but there's no flow to it. So, if the flow is good, you can also get away with half rhymes. So, the example I give is in the Jungle Book remake, the live-action one that came out a couple years ago. The update version of I Wanna Be Like You has 2 rhymes with Gigantopithecus.
Oh, Jesus.
So in this, for some reason, they inexplicably made King Louie, instead of being an orangutan, they made him this prehistoric species of ape called Gigantopithecus that died 100,000 years ago. Well before...
Before Jungle Book should have even happened, yeah.
Yeah, if you're going all prehistoric, just make Shere Khan a saber-toothed tiger, and make the snake...
Those chompers were big, though.
Make the snake a titanoboa, because he's already plenty big in this version. But anyway, so... They changed with Gigantopithecus, and they updated the song to have some rhymes with it. I only remember one of them. I should have done the research to look at the other one. I don't remember it was a made-up word, but so at one point they're like, "What you might think it's ridiculous that me, a Gigantopithecus."
Well, I mean, speaking of making up words, though, this reminds me one of my favorite Broadway musicals is the musical Wicked. I have the original Broadway cast recording, and there's a character in that show by the name of Madame Morrible.
Okay.
Who ends up making these words. It's a character trait established that she just makes up words sometimes, uses them, kind of like malapropisms, but it's not
like
necessarily the wrong It's not the wrong context so much as it's the wrong pronunciation. But in her singing, she ends up making things rhyme. So, like the word surreptitious.
Okay.
There's a time where she says that Elphaba is sneaking surreptitiously, and she ends up rhyming it with officially later, and I just love that.
That's pretty good.
It's like, that is so brilliant.
I remember the other line now. He says magnificus.
All right, fair enough.
But
yeah, I can't help but think of supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. There's nothing
funny
that rhymes
you
with
mentioned
it, so they just
that.
say it again.
It's funny you mentioned that because the Sherman brothers were the guy who wrote the music for the original Jungle Book and for Mary Poppins.
And for Mary Poppins.
And actually for the live-action remake, the lyrics that were updated were done by the surviving Sherman brother.
That is hilarious.
So he's the one who decided to make Gigantopithecus rhyme with stuff.
Well, I mean, he probably was limited because they said, oh, well, he's going to be a Gigantopithecus, even though that doesn't make sense.
But he didn't have to add that to the song.
You're right.
They didn't have to, so he decided to do it.
Speaking on this point, though, like, I love Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Yeah.
They do a lot of stuff like this where they have these words like, how in the heck did they make that a rhyming lyric? It's really brilliant. I love that kind of creativity.
Do you have any examples? Because I like some of Rodgers and Hammerstein's musicals, but I can't think of any examples.
Something about, I can't remember if it's Rodgers and Hammerstein now that I think about it, but Camelot, the musical.
Right. That's not one of my favorites, so it makes sense I wouldn't remember that one.
Not one of your favorites, no, it's fine. But, they have something about, they're saying Camelot, and so something about something a lot. It's always
Isn't that what they did in Monty Python?
They refer to that.
We dine while here in Camelot, we eat ham and jam and Spamalot.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's probably
where they got it from. I like to push the Pramalot.
But, like, that kind of thing is really fascinating to me, especially because how far do you bend conventions of language to make rhymes work? That said, yes, I agree with you on flow, and I agree with the slant rhymes, the half rhymes stuff. However, I'm going to go on record here and say that you don't necessarily need to make them all rhyme.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just doesn't work, especially if you do supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. There's nothing that rhymes with that, so what are you going to do?
Even though it sounds a bit precocious or whatever they say.
Well, they do precocious, atrocious, and all that stuff. I get that, but, like, you know... Oh God, what was the word? There was a certain word that everybody's like, oh, there's nothing that rhymes with
orange
it. Orange,
and then door hinge.
Yeah, that's as close as you get. Slant rhyme. And you know, you may have to use stuff like that if you want to keep it rhyming. That said, like poetry, lyrics don't have to rhyme. Yes, it sounds more pleasing to the ear. It fits your meter better if they do that. And rhythm is obviously a thing with lyrics, especially if they become a full song, far more than simple poetry reading.
Right.
Does.
There's definitely...
Personal opinion. Feel free to at me.
There's definitely a lot of flexibility to it, more than you might think. Like, another example I can think of, there's sometimes they have it where, like, the rhyme is in the middle of a word, rather than, or, like, that's, like one is at the end and the other one's at the middle. Here's the example I give. In The Prince of Egypt, at the beginning, there's the song Deliver Us, where the slaves are singing about, like, oh, they're being oppressed by the Egyptians, I want to get out of this. I mean, that's the basic, simplified version of it.
Right.
But they say, one of the lyrics is, I think it's Elohim, God of high, can you hear your people cry? Help us now, this dark hour. And then they say, deliver us. Help us now, this dark hour. Deliver us. They make it work somehow.
To be fair, this is something else that I'm gonna go ahead and overwrite my tip 2 and go into the next one here. That I want to mention that because this is a song,
right.
Meter is vital.
Yes.
Absolutely vital. Obviously, you've got a bunch of different ways to do rhythm in song, and, you know, for more on that, you should study it yourself, like I had to at college. But, you know, it's one of those things that a song does not have life without some form of rhythm guiding
Right.
it. Poetry can be all over the place because it's personal affectation and there's no like set need for, melody or harmony underneath it.
Right.
But with a song, that is necessary.
Yes.
And so you have to work your way around that. Like the thing you mentioned with Prince of Egypt, was
Yes.
it? The movie?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. With Prince of Egypt, like they made it work because they sustained the note. They used that rhythm to get the rhyme without finishing the phrase because it's just within the same breath.
Right.
And so like it's really nice to see something like that. Rhythm is obviously a huge part of music, one of many. And because this is music, or attempting to be music, that also should be a part of your lyric.
Right.
Much like poetry, the lyric should speak to you somehow.
Makes sense.
Maybe the words don't rhyme, make any sense to the audience, or butcher every single pronunciation in the English language, but don't lose sight of why you've made this song to begin with.
Right.
One helpful thing that I like to do before finalizing the melody is a poetry reading style read-through.
Interesting.
Like, just take the music aspect out for a second and make sure that your inflections and whatnot are either implied in the music or aided by it, should you choose to make that yourself.
Right.
Obviously, Donald mentioned music and lyrics earlier in the movie, brief spoiler-free summary, the two do one part of that title apiece.
Right.
Some people are good with music, some people are good with lyrics, and they combined together to make a full product.
Right.
Maybe you just do the lyrics, maybe you just do the music, but eventually if those two are married together, the music and lyrics, I mean not necessarily characters in that movie.
Right. Although we don't see it, they did get together, but we don't know if they got married.
Spoiler free. Anyway.
I mean, it's a romantic comedy. People figured.
Yeah, pretty much. But, take one aspect out and see if it stands on its own and see what the other can do to make that a reality.
Right.
What I want to say there. Did you have another tip?
Nope. I'm really tired. Let's get this going.
I'll go ahead and skip into my next one.
Yes.
Always keep your burgeoning song lyrics in a place that's easy to access and hard to lose track of.
I mean, that's a given for pretty much a lot of writing, but I guess this especially because you want to keep what you had in mind as you were writing it, so...
Exactly. Particularly, I tend to, when I have this stuff finalized, I will go to a Word document and type it down. Sometimes this means that I'll forget the melody entirely, but at least the lyrics are there, so you don't waste them. A wasted lyric has as much value as that piece of junk mail you never cared about. Don't junk your lyrics. Don't get rid of them wholesale unless you have made a concrete change made already.
Makes sense.
Right. Whether it's repurposing the words and putting them in a different place, whether it's just scrapping that verse and having a new one already made, it might even simply be axing the entire song. But unless you have made the decision to do it or have some substitute, I mean, if you're deleting it, you don't need a substitute, but you get the point.
Right.
Don't just trash them. That's a waste of your creativity.
Yeah.
Like learning to walk, every step you make is precious at the beginning.
Yes.
So don't forget where your earworm came from.
Makes sense to me. All right.
Yeah.
So...
Final thoughts.
Yes.
Sorry, I've been taking over this episode.
That's
Hopefully
fine. I
will make up for
expected it.
next
I
time.
don't have much to contribute on this one. So...
All right, so poetry is very nice. For more on that, as we've already referenced the episode, I won't do it again here.
Thank you.
And there are so many methods to writing it.
Yes.
Lyrics are similar, but only to one kind of poetry, if you will.
Right.
I tend to compose the melody and the lyric together, but that's only my method of composition.
Okay.
Yours can be different.
Makes sense.
This particular style of writing has benefits because you can utilize the divine art form of music to embellish your words. Right. And make sure you try multiple words in those places the rhythm doesn't want to work right. Maybe you have to change the rhythm. That is a possibility. But you could probably find another word for it that fits the meter better.
Okay, makes sense.
All right, here we go. Kept you waiting, listeners. Here's your moment, Donald. How would you compare lyric writing to poetry?
Oh, don't do this to me. I'm so tired and I have no idea. I'm also hungry. I think my last meal was like 6 hours ago, and since then I've had one Oreo. The only reason why I had an Oreo, I know I said I was trying to lose weight earlier, listeners. My mother had it out. She was gonna go to this bird meeting. She's part of the Audubon group, and she had some snacks, and one of them was an Oreo. And you know Oreos, they're so tempting. I couldn't resist. I had one, just one, okay. But in hindsight, I probably should have had more because I'm really hungry.
In hindsight, you probably should have had more. Not for your weight loss mission, but for your appetite, maybe.
I'm so hungry. How are lyrics writing to different writing from poetry? I think you covered it all. I think just like, I think you're right. Think of the melody you're thinking of before writing the lyrics, I think. Because that way you have a better feel on what the flow of what your words are. With poetry, there is a flow, but it's like, it's more meant to be read rather than heard, so.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, discounting poetry reading section.
Right, but that's not, I'm saying that might be its intent, but it's different, so.
But lyrics are, if you make it into a full song and get the song out there, it is designed to be heard directly,
yes.
As opposed to simply you can read and put your own interpretation in place if you want. Right. So there is that. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you for that.
No problem.
I appreciate the comment. That's it for this week because I obviously have way more to say and Donald doesn't. We're just going to go ahead and move through this quickly.
Sounds good.
If you have more questions, please contact us. Matt D with 2 T's at MatthewDonaldCreator.com. You can use your own email to that address directly, or you can go to the Matthew Donald Creator website and use the Contact Us page. Yes. I'm assuming if you're making questions about this particular episode that they're going to be directed at me, but just in case they're not, please specify which host you're asking a question
Matt
to.
Donald.
Also, if you want us to read things on air, please let us know.
Yes.
We'd love to do that for you guys.
Love to. Yes, but if you want to follow me personally, you can follow me at Matthew Donald Creator on Facebook, at Matthew Donald 64 on Twitter, and Matthew Donald 64 on Instagram. Why 64? Because 64 years ago, 64 birdies flew over 64 clouds, and I wanted to honor that historic event. You ever heard of that crazy incident, David?
I haven't heard of that particular one, but I'm glad you I'm glad you honored it in your handles. Mm-hmm. That said, I was thinking you would try and make something about how 64th notes are way too many, but that's okay. Anyway, until next time, listeners. That was us two. That was us two twits. One of us who's a twit about music too, talking about lyric writing. We've got one more thing for you next week. We'll talk about that then. But until next time, I'm Matt David.
I'm Matt Donald. Keep writing.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye.